Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all! You teach me, and I'll teach you! I'm teaching!
Welcome to the world of Pokemon! Pokemon, also known as Pocket Monsters, was created by Satoshi Tajiri in 1995. It first began as a hobby for Tajiri in Tokyo. Then, with the help of Ken Sugimori, Game Freak Studios was created in hope to fulfill Tajiri's dream. The project of bringing Pokemon to life almost drove Game Freak Studios to bankruptcy. But finally, on February 27, 1996, the first Pokemon games released to Nintendo Game Boy was Pokemon Red and Green, and later followed up by Pokemon Blue. Since Pokemon was becoming so popular in Japan, the Media Factory invented Pokemon the trading card game. The first set of cards was released on October 20th, 1996. Pokemon manga series also began to become popular. The first being Pokemon Pocket Monsters, which was released in November 1996. One of the more popular Pokemon manga series that was released in October 1997 was Pokemon Adventures. This anime series is still going on today. Pokemon also came out with a manga series pertaining to the girls' side called Pokemon Pi Pi Pi, which later was called Pokemon Magical Journey. There is over 50 plus manga series of Pokemon.
Due to the Pokemon success in Japan, the series were released overseas. A localization team attempted to change the Pokemon's designs, fearing the cute designs would not appeal to Western gamers. The proposal was refused, and a good thing it was refused. Pokemon became a hit in America. The trading card game, the anime series, and Electric Tail of Pikachu was translated to English.
Meanwhile, in Japan in 1998, a new game, Pokemon Stadium, was released to the popular Nintendo 64. Pokemon Stadium only included 42 out of the first 151 Pokemon in the game, resulting in it being unsuccessful. The company then released a sequel, which was then released international. The graphics were much better and less delayed. It definitely wasn't your average Xbox or PlayStation today.
Since the anime series was becoming so popular, they pushed their franchise to the next level. On July 18, 1998, the first Pokemon movie, Two Strikes Back, was released to Japanese theaters. This movie was commonly known as Pokemon the First Movie. On November 10, 1999, the movie was released to America. The movie briefly held the record for highest grossing opening for an animated film.
On September 12, 1998, Pokemon Yellow was released in Japan. Pokemon Yellow allowed trainers to take the role of Ash Ketchum and travel the Kanto region with anime graphic style Pokemon and a Pikachu by their side. The anime series, as well as Pokemon Yellow, marked Pikachu as the most popular and recognized creature in Pokemon history, making Pikachu the franchise mascot. This led to a spin-off game called Hey You Pikachu, and a Nintendo 64 version which let players interact verbally with Pikachu. Also, a new game, Pikachu Pinball, was released to the new Game Boy Color.
Almost since the beginning of the first anime series, it was noticeable that the 151 Pokemon were not going to be its last. Many Pokemon on the anime series were shown and were not in any of the Pokemon games, so finally, on November 21st, 1999, Pokemon Gold and Silver were released to Game Boy Color. This time, trainers were set in the region of Johto, introducing over 100 new Pokemon. The second generation introduced many new aspects, including Pokemon genders and shiny Pokemon. Also, on July 8, 2000, the third movie, Spell of the Unknown, featuring a legendary Pokemon, Entei. Like Pokemon Yellow, a third version was made called Pokemon Crystal. Pokemon Crystal had many noticeable differences than Gold and Silver, Suicune being the first version's mascot and focusing more on the plot of the game. Also in this version, for the first time, players were able to choose their gender in the game.
Starting on December 2000, 3 new movies were coming out, including a sequel to Mewtwo Strikes Back called Mewtwo Returns. Then in July 2001, Celebi Voice of Forest was released, featuring 2 of legendary Suicune and Celebi relating to Pokemon Crystal. Raikou, the only member of Legendary Beast yet to be seen in any anime series, received its own movie called Legend of Thunder. This movie was not as popular, possibly because Ash and his friends were not in there, but the second generation characters were. In July 2002, the 5th movie, Pokemon Heroes, was released in Japan then a year later to America.
On November 21st, 2002, the third generation game was released to Pokemon Game Boy Advance, called Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. Trainers found themselves in the Hoenn region with 135 new Pokemon to capture and train. A new anime series also began, introducing a new character, May, from the third generation, replacing Misty. Also, new movies came out, including Jirachi, Wishmaker, and Destroy Deoxys in 2004. Pokemon Coliseum also came out to GameCube, focusing mainly on Shadow Pokemon.
In January 2004, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green were released in Japan. They were remakes of Pokemon Red and Blue, but giving them Generation 3 graphics and also adding wireless connectivity. They also made a third game to complement Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire with Pokemon Emerald. This included adding Battle Frontier and an alternative ending. The anime series also caught up, creating movies Lucario and The Mystery of Mew and Pokemon Ranger Temple of the Sea.
In August 2005, trainers were invited back to battle with Shadow Pokemon and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, a sequel to Pokemon Coliseum taking place 5 years later. A new style of Pokemon came to shape in 2005 in November called Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, in which the players were turned into Pokemon and set out to rescue others. Another twist of the game came out to Nintendo DS on March 2006, Pokemon Ranger. In this game, players didn't play as regular Pokemon trainers. They were known as Pokemon Rangers using a capture styler instead of using Pokeballs. The year 2006 also marked the 10th anniversary of Pokemon.
Players began noticing the hints the company were giving to the players by revealing new Pokemon in the anime series and movies. In September of 2006, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl were introduced as well as 107 new Pokemon to train. Players were brought into the Sinnoh region, and instead of the classic villainous Team Rocket, Team Galactic was introduced. The 3 movies of this series form a continuous trilogy. The first part of the trilogy, The Rise of Darkrai. The second part, Giratina and the Sky Warrior. And the final in the trilogy, Arceus and the Jewel of Light.
On December 14, 2006, Generation 4 released the first 3D game upon the release of Nintendo Wii entitled Pokemon Battle Revolution. It was released to the US on June 25, 2007. Then, Pokemon Rangers was introduced to the US with a sequel called Shadow of Almia. In March 6, 2010, another Pokemon Ranger game called Guardian Science was released also. Pokemon Platinum was released on March 22, 2009. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time and Darkness, and a third version, Explorers of Sky, was released in the US August 4, 2009.
Ever since the Generation 3 remakes for the incompatible Generation 1 Green and Red games, Pokemon fans have widely speculated that the remakes of the Pokemon 2 games, Gold and Silver, would be made for Nintendo DS. The remakes were made, titled Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, released in September 2009, introducing graphics alike Pokemon Diamond and Pearl to the DS.
On February 7, 2010, Pokemon Sunday revealed a new Pokemon, Zoroark. Generation 5 was dying, and it quickly became clear that even though the new Pokemon games, Pokemon Black and White, would again be on the Nintendo DS platform, everything about them would be quite new. In an unexpected move, Nintendo revealed that no old Pokemon would be available in the games until the main storyline had been completed, effectively giving both new and old trainers in the Unova, a region based on New York City, rather than Japan, a completely fresh experience. On September 18, 2010, when the games were released to Japan, 156 new Pokemon were introduced, making this the biggest Pokemon generation yet. The game included Season Change, Pokemon Musical, along with Triple Battle. The anime series also changed, including Ash Ketchum, who received an upgrade appearance. 2 new Pokemon movies were released, Zoroark Master of Illusions and Heroes of Fire and Thunder, which were released in January 2000. It was always anticipated that Black and White would eventually get a third version, as past generations have. Many assumed it would be called Pokemon Gray version. However, this time there would be sequels, and with a different plot altogether. Sequels to Pokemon Black and White. Pokemon Black and White versions 2 were released in Japan in June 2012 and came to North America, Europe, and Australia in October 2012. The game features 2 new forms of Kyurem, called Black Kyurem and White Kyurem, as well as 2 new forms of the Forces of Nature and Keldo. The game takes place 2 years after Black and White, and many things have changed in the region.
On January 8th, 2013, Nintendo simultaneously announced to the world that a new generation of Pokemon would be coming through a special edition of Nintendo Direct called Pokemon Direct. Pokemon X and Y, the first games of Generation 6, were revealed and released worldwide on October 12th, 2013. These two games will introduce several new Pokemon, and the Pokemon series will be taking a new leap into a 3D world on the Nintendo 3DS. Shown during the unveiling were 3 new starter Pokemon. In addition, the first time in the franchise history, the new games would be released to most of the world on the same day. Recently, on May 6, 2014, it was announced that there is going to be a remake of Pokemon Sapphire and Ruby called Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. These included the same 3D graphics as Pokemon X and Y. There is no news when the remake will be released. Now we will see the hardships of being a Pokemon trainer.
Pikachu, you can't just go around farting everywhere. You gotta learn to cover it up, like me. Otherwise, everyone will think you're gross. I cover it up by coughing. Did you just fart? What? No. Or sometimes clapping?
Thanks for having lunch with me, Ash. I know this is way more food than we need. It's just... Did you just fart?
What? No. And sometimes you can just talk really loud and cover it up! You just gotta be polite. My dad taught me that trick before I left my mom.
Ketchup.